Every clinician at some point has stood at a patient's bedside and asked themselves the fundamental question, what's going to happen next? Will this treatment work? Are they safe to go home? What's their real risk of decline? This uncertainty is at the very core of clinical practice. The US electronic healthcare giant Epic, in collaboration with Yale and Microsoft, recently unveiled a new foundation model they've called Comet, attempting to answer this question at large scale. It isn't just another predictive algorithm for a single disease, it's a generative model trained on a staggering dataset from Epic's Cosmos platform, 118 million patient records and over 115 billion medical events. For context, that's double the patient count of the UK's impressive Foresight model. The goal is for Comet to learn the underlying grammar of a patient's clinical story, the sequence of diagnoses, blood tests, medications, and then simulate what's likely to happen next for these and other patients. The initial results seem very impressive across 78 different clinical tasks, from predicting the onset of type 2 diabetes to forecasting length of hospital stay. Comet matched or even outperformed specialised models built for these single tasks alone. It did this zero shot without any specific fine-tuning. This suggests it's learning something deep and generalisable about clinical trajectories. But as a pragmatist, the first question is always, what is the model actually learning from? And this brings us to a central hurdle with this type of algorithm. Comet's brilliant at predicting the next documented event, but that's not always the same as the next clinical event. The model was trained on 13 years of data from 2012 to 2025. And in that time, the very meaning of our data shifted under our feet somewhat. This isn't just about data, it's about data archaeology. So if you think about it, we had a massive transition from ICD-9 to ICD-10 coding. Clinical guidelines for hypertension, heart failure, diabetes have all been completely rewritten in that time. What we considered standard care in 2013 looks very different today. The model learns that a certain pattern leads to a certain outcome, but both the pattern and the outcome might be artifacts of a bygone era of medicine and documentation. This is compounded by the culture of documentation itself, the rise of copy-paste coding decisions driven by billing optimization, particularly in America, rather than clinical precision per se. And the simple fact that care happening outside an Epic system is invisible to this sort of algorithm and its training. So in amongst the complex mixture of true clinical signals that the model is learning is a fairly large amount of historical documentation noise. But despite all that noise, Comet's ability to predict heart failure with 93% accuracy or flag conditions weeks ahead of clinical suspicion does indicate it's getting at something potentially quite powerful. The clinical signal buried in that data is very strong enough to shine through that mess and the noise. So what might the important next steps be? Well, the evidence so far is based on a massive retrospective data set. To build trust with a skeptical clinical audience, an important next piece of evidence will be a multi-site prospective study validating Comet's predictions against real-time patient outcomes in a diverse range of hospitals, not just necessarily large academic centres. So Comet isn't necessarily a magical crystal ball, but it's a powerful probabilistic map of the future. It shows us the likely paths that a group of patients might travel towards. But our ability to navigate by that map will depend entirely on how well we maintain the roads that are on the map. That maintenance of data is the fuel that runs these sorts of AIs and will be important if we want to incorporate these types of approaches into clinical care.